This. All right. Welcome to Radical Books and Politics. It is my pleasure and honor to have Sedillo for the fourth or fifth time. And we have the honor of also having Patrick, I don't want to butcher your last name, Barnovskis. And also we have Lew, all amazing artists and poets. But we're primarily here to talk about this coup that happened in DC and the danger that organized fascists pose and what can we do about it? It's a critical question in our times. And so how about we go in order, Matt? Why don't you introduce yourself and then Patrick and then Lew?
I'm Matt Sedillo. I'm a poet based out of Los Angeles, California. I'm the author of Mowing Leaves the Grass, and a couple other books that are coming out this year. So more to come.
And I highly, highly 5-star recommend. That book is amazing. One of the best poetry books I've read this year, for sure. And welcome guests. We have 3 guests watching. Feel free to ask questions, chat. So, Patrick, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Patrick. I'm part of the advisory board with the Chicago Union of the Homeless and mutual aid, and worker with them and the larger movement in Chicago for housing. And I'm also a musician, and honored to be here.
Yo, and I'm gonna tell you, your music is so amazing. You gotta check out Adam Gottlieb and One Love. Just so fucking. I mean, sorry, I do cuss a lot. I cuss. You guys can cuss on my show. Your songs are just amazing. I love We Need Peace. I love that fucking song. So Lou, go ahead.
Lew Rosenbuam, founding member of the League of Revolutionaries for New America, sometime poet, writer, and been involved in a lot of activities, concentrating especially over the last 20 years in terms of education, public education.
Awesome. So one of the things I've been noticing in the reactions of people is that regarding the shit that happened in the Capitol, was some people downplayed it as just, these clowns, but I think it's more dangerous than that. I think that the fascists are getting organized, have the potential to get more organized. And I wonder if you could maybe give your initial reactions to what happened in DC on January 6th. Lou, do you want to start?
I can start, sure. I was thinking maybe Matt because he has to leave earlier, but
Matt, actually, that makes more sense. Go ahead. However you guys want to go.
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I do think that there is definitely a tendency to downplay this or underplay this, make light of it. Which, I mean, you can mock things without making light of it. I mean, mockery is a kind of a form of combat anyway. But it's definitely something to take it very seriously. I mean, the fact of the matter is that I think that a lot of people are focused on social media right now and like looking at how social media has been used as a tool to organize those fascists. But I think that belies the problem. The fact that social media is so effective a tool in organizing fascists is only evidence that there are that many fascists. I mean, that's really what we have to do. And I think we do have to come to terms with just how many fascists, just how many latent fascist tendencies there really are in this country, and really look at and see the size and scope of the problem. That said, social media is also used as a way to organize mass protests, as we saw earlier this year. That tells you how many potential revolutionaries are in this country. The country's highly divided. It's full of monsters, but it's also full of angels, and it's full of fighters, and it's full of people who want a better world. But really coming to terms with the fact that the country is polarizing, and it's polarizing in some of the worst ways possible. And some of the people that you've known over the years that at times only expressed, slightly reactionary view, kind of whatever. There's no cap on that. There's no limit to that. There's no sky on that. A lot of those people go for as far as the worst episodes in human history. They will, and I think that Donald Trump is really, with the voraciousness of his style of attack, has really shown that. But it's not like there was no. This is less than a week left. There's no way that they're not going to stop. Is what I'm saying. They're not going to stop. They're not going to self-regulate. They're not going to be like, okay, well, now we've gone too far. We're racist, but that's too far. That's really not going to happen. It's kind of like Lincoln Project kind of vision of the good Republican soul. Where that's not going to be what's going to cap this. It really is. It really is something that's going to have to be confronted.
Absolutely, 100%. And Patrick, do you want to go next?
How about Lou can go? I'm just about to get home from work, so I'll join in just a second.
Go ahead, Lou.
Okay, well, I think we got to start with the reality that underneath all of this stuff is the year-long pandemic that's been going on that has really set the basis for a lot of this that has been going on through society for a long time. So we have right now millions of people threatened with eviction. We have millions of people, well, almost 400,000 people dead because of the virus,
Yeah.
and the fact that we haven't got a government that can take care of its people. We have a health service which is in total disarray. We have tens of thousands of people in the street, living in the street because they have to live in the street, not because they want to. All of this stuff is underneath what we see happening in the polarization that Matt was talking about.
Right.
So here you have this and I don't think we should make light of the fact that this really was an attempted coup, and it was an attempted coup to overthrow the election
Right.
that is supposed to be the hallowed element of American democracy.
That's true.
Whatever we think about American democracy, whatever we think about how weak that is, however fragile democracy can be when you don't have economic democracy.
Yep.
Regardless of all that, the question of the vote is something which is sacred in the American psyche, if you will.
Yeah.
And here you have thousands of people in Washington to overturn the election, and with regardless of whether or not they believe that it was fraudulent, the reality of the fact that they were there to overturn that is a very significant thing. Other thing I want to say is that I don't think we should make light of the theatrics of the coup. The reality of the fact that there was a gallows erected on the banks of the Potomac River, a gallows, with a noose hanging there.
Fucking ridiculous.
And as people paraded around, laughing and singing, and there are people who are trying to say, they were just there for merriment. Well, I'll tell you, the thing that has been haunting me ever since is, and from the time this happened, from the time I saw the gallows there especially, was the fact that 100 years ago, in the United States of America, people took postcards, pictures of lynchings, had picnics around lynchings, laughed and sang as people were lynched. This is where this attempted coup came from. It came from this history of white supremacy. It came from the history that we've seen ever since. And there's a friend of mine who was a teacher who was saying that just at the time of the coup, they were studying the post-Civil War Reconstruction, the Hayes-Tilden Agreement, and the attempt to overthrow democracy then, which was successful.
Right.
So this is nothing to take lightly. It's a very serious moment in American history, and it has nothing to do with whether or not Joe Biden is going to be a good guy or not. It has everything to do with whether or not the government is going to provide for the basic needs of the people and what the people are going to do about it.
No, that's exactly right. In fact, I was posing that question, not as articulate as you are this morning. What is this new crew going to provide for the people? Because whether Biden's in office or not, teachers are still going to fight because of these. I mean, so much is going on in the nation right now. So much is at stake. But Patrick, can you want to say a few words? Are you able to?
Oh yeah. You know, I saw a very funny meme on last week when this was going down. That said basically due to travel restrictions, the United States had to organize a coup at home this year, which is ridiculous because of course the United States is still all over the world, even with coronavirus. But no, I think yes, this was a. We don't need to necessarily get into semantics about it. It was a fascist attempt at a coup,
Right.
And there's plenty of evidence about all that, and I think the thing that I was watching with a lot of interest is just the way that people a lot of, I guess, more like liberals in this country were just in utter disbelief at what was happening,
Yep.
as like the fact that this, was unthinkable. But, I guess back to that joke is like, no, the U.S. organizes armed insurrections in the capitals of countries all over the world,
Exactly.
all the time.
Exactly.
Yep. True.
Exactly.
So, welcome, guests. I'm so glad to have Kathy and Eric. Kathy Powers and Eric Allen Yankee are both amazing poets from Chicago. So, Kathy says, many times I've fantasized everybody streaming out from their homes and refusing to cooperate in any way until we get food, shelter, and healthcare. Props on that. And then, real quick, or really not so quick, Eric says that with Trump supporters threatening and committing acts of violence and Biden spewing meaningless platitudes about uniting the country, do you think there is any way to unite a working class that is this divided? 75 million Trump voters want a revolution, but it's a revolution that includes Nazis, exactly, and Confederate symbolism, hatred of immigrants, people very much proud of the racism, etc. This is a revolution I want nothing to do with, other than trying to stop it, of course. And he says, on the other, there's more to it. On the other, I think it ends there. See you, Kathy. Thanks for joining. So, what do you think? Can we unite the country, and on what basis?
So I want to say a couple things.
Sure.
Like people ask this question, or people have tried in 2016 and again now to say that the Trump vote wasn't really racist; it was really based on economic insecurity. And really, I don't really see that kind of distinction. I don't really see a distinction in that. I mean, like we talk about, what is known as the 14 words was we must secure a future for our white children, right? Now, that is an economic demand. That is the economic demand of racists, right? And the economic demand of racists tends to be fascist, right? It means we need to secure the resources for our group, and we need to kill other people in order to do that, right? So that's kind of what I see when I see these things. When I look at this, and I remember reading a passage from a book by Ed Baptist, and he talked about when Andrew Jackson had won, right? And this was a very similar thing, where he was bringing in kind of like frontiers people who were like saw themselves as not part of the elite or alienated by the elite founding fathers, right? But what that Jacksonian kind of spirit represented was like, frontiersmen like running in the White House and getting like dirt all over the floors, and this is what the way a real man parties and stuff like that. And Trump very much, very, very, very much taps into that kind of spirit, frontier, get it done, ask questions later, kind of thing that appeals to essentially fascists, right?
Right.
Now, when we look at the question of like that Eric was talking about, a Biden unity. Well, what does Biden unity look like now? Because I think this is going to be really important, because this is what's going to unroll over the next few months, right? This is what's going to be the new thing, right? And what it's going to really look like is that they're going to start attacking. I believe they're going to start attacking the concept of excess. Everything's going to be about excess. Everything's going to be about, like, don't go too far. Don't be an extreme. Don't be extremely left. Don't be extremely right. We need unity. We need to be down the middle. We need that. And in the name of unity, what they're really going to do is they're probably going to target like some high profile, right, conscious people. Maybe Sean Hannity will like lose whatever, something like that. But then systematically, they're going to go after like left outlets. Systematically, they're going to try to purge the internet of fakes of various sizes, big, medium, small. All of us are gonna have a lot.
We're seeing it already.
we're going to have a lot more trouble getting our message out, because it's all going to be done in the name of peace, security, healing, unity, etc. And that's what they're going to do. I mean, that's what they always do. I mean, that's what the Democrats always do. What it is that the Republicans will do something that will scare the general populace, and the Democrat solution will be to, do some high profile stuff over here, and then like across the board silence the left.
I agree, and like I said, you're seeing that now with how they're blocking accounts. They didn't just fucking dumb Trump on Twitter and Pinterest or wherever. They're going after the radical left and have been, right? So props to Kathy, who says hashtag end capitalism. Lou or Patrick, on this question of unity.
Let me jump in here, because I think there is no doubt what kind of unity Joe Biden is calling for. He is calling for a unity of a section of the working class with capital. That's what he's calling for. That's what he's aiming for, and that kind of unity is bound to be based in one way or another in white supremacy. It's got to be. There's also the other unity that's being attempted, and that is the unity of all white people, an all white nation kind of thing. That's not possible. It's not possible anymore. It used to be possible at some point, not possible anymore. First of all, you had 70 some million people voting for Trump for whatever reason. None of us know exactly what that reason was. There's 70 million people. There's probably 70 million reasons, but nobody knows for sure. There's also 80 some million people that voted for Joe Biden. Similarly, nobody knows for sure what the reasons were, except that at least most of those people were anti-Trump.
Right.
That they were voting for Biden because they didn't want Trump in. Now, once you get beyond that, you have to start thinking about what is it within the American people that provides the possibilities for unity. And there really is only one thing, and that is economic insecurity.
Yeah.
The very fact, now, I grant you that there are large numbers of people who are in economic insecurity that are racist or that are expressing racist ideas. But the only thing that can bring people together at some point is the battle of the belly. That is to say, what is it that holds us together? Now, example, not a great example in this. Well, there's two examples. One example is the black guard at the Capitol who was confronted by a Trump supporter who said, and the Trump supporter says, why should I pay for reparations that your ancestors, whatever, all the inequality for all those years, why should it come out of my paycheck? I have no reason for, I'm against reparations for that reason. And so you've got this dichotomy here where nobody is raising, or at least I would raise, and I'm sure Matt and Patrick would raise this also, and probably Eric too, would raise the question, well, why should it come from your paycheck? Why shouldn't it come from Warren Buffett's paycheck? Why shouldn't it come from Jeff Bezos's paycheck? Why shouldn't it come from the handful of capitalists who've made $1 trillion in the last 6 months on the pandemic?
Yep.
Why are we talking about this nonsense about little bitty, my little paycheck, even if it's
$1,000 or whatever? Yeah, for sure.
So I think that's really kind of key here in recognizing what we're facing. Last thing is, and I think it's important to recognize that there's a hard core of this, these Trump fascists who were definitely in Washington. That was there, and we're going to see them on the 17th in every state capital in this country. But we should not lose sight of the fact these are the angels that Matt was talking about. We should not lose sight of the fact that there were over 26 million people in the streets this summer. Our troops.
Yep.
Fighting around fighting around Black Lives Matter.
Right. Absolutely.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That is huge. And we first have to work within that section of society for unity and find the commonality there. We have to find the commonality in. I mean, look at the people who fought in Georgia for voting rights in this last election against all intimidation. A multiracial group of people. We have to fight for that unity.
And I think that's absolutely on point, because we talk about this because I'm also a union organizer. No, I mean, I'm a union leader, and we grapple with this. But you're absolutely right. We need to aim for those people that are on our side. We need to find even fucking those cops that are on our side, because they're there. You know, there's people that support Black Lives Matter and are anti-Trump or whatever. But because I wonder, like, I don't know how to reach out to these motherfuckers, these fascists, I know that they're hurting economically, but I don't know how to talk to them, you know? Patrick? Well, Eric posted something because we were talking about this in another meeting. He says, Elon Musk, he can launch a car into space so he can buy housing for the homeless too.
He sure can.
What was it like in the last 10 months? Elon Musk has made over $175 billion more dollars. And you know what? It would be breadcrumbs for this motherfucker to take care of all of us. And that's just one fucking billionaire. That's just one billionaire. And he would still be wealthy beyond imagination. I don't even know how you can even spend $27 billion, let alone over $200 billion. And
Can I respond to Kathy's points, though, I think?
Sure.
Because, I mean, her imagination of people streaming out. And I think that's really important that, in fact, I mean, in a certain sense, that's what the 26.5 million people were trying to do this summer around the question of George Floyd and that kind of police brutality and murder and stuff like that. They were streaming out of their house, refusing to cooperate with the government until obviously they didn't get what they wanted entirely, but they certainly put the government on notice.
Yep.
They said, you know, we in small town America to big cities, we will not stand for a situation where Black lives do not matter. Yep. We will no longer stand by. Now, that's the beginning. And I think Kathy is right.
Yeah.
At some point, this is what we're going to see is some kind of mass uprising that will take place based on what she's saying, that people do not have adequate food. They do not have adequate shelter. They do not have health care, and they will not be able to stand it.
Yep, 100%. Patrick?
Well, I know Matt needs to go soon. So, Matt, if you want to go instead, go for it.
Yeah, no, I agree with Lou. I mean, if you look at like what was going on, I mean, but it's also important to realize the George Floyd thing went international. I mean, there were people like, you know, they were, you know, in New Zealand doing the haka. I mean, you had all kinds of people doing that, and in so many situations, they were definitely in solidarity with George Floyd, but they were also bringing like their own trajectory of their pain and suffering. You know, I know in LA there was a lot of things around the kids in cages. I know that Adelanto got hit, and something that was kind of really not covered that well. But yeah, again, the heart and soul is the thing behind all this was kind of this, you know, Black-led rebellion of multiracial people who were, you know, taking the trajectory of the history that they had suffered in this country. And I think that you know that's kind of, you know, everyone bringing what they have to the table and fighting to get it and understanding it. I mean, for me coming at when I think about Trump and I think about the phenomenon Trump and I think about the things that he has done and said, I have to go back to how it started. I mean, it comes down to escalator, says Mexico sending drug dealers and rapists, and then proceeded to have the most like anti-Mexican campaign in really in recent American history. I mean, making this really a focal point that had not happened before that. I mean, this has been a way to get elected governor of California. This has been a way to, rally your base in Arizona. This has been kind of a Southwest regional thing.
Right.
But actually get all the way to the presidency on the basis of like, it's Mexico, the Mexicans. When you do something about the Mexicans, there's too many Mexicans. It's no longer America. I took that personally. So like that was really something for me. So to watch all this unfold and to see that even now, to show up his base, where's he going? He's kicked off where he's running. He goes to Texas and it's hanging out the border wall. So I think it's very, very important in the future that, along with all these other questions that we invest in, we really begin to understand the history of the Mexican border. We really understand the history of the demonization of this group of people, because I really do think that in the future, the conditions that created the demonization of Mexicans, or making that such a focal point. It'd been in here in the U.S. for a very long time, and it's been kind of a pillar of sections of the U.S., but it's growing in popularity to become a national question. The reason is because of the demographic shift, and those numbers aren't going anywhere. Those numbers are going to increase. It's going to keep going and going and going, and so there will be more Trumps. There will be more attacks on the Mexican border. There will be more questions of America no longer being America because there are too many Mexicans.
Yeah.
And that's something that we're going to have to contend with in the future. And that's not something that Mexican people are going to have to contend with. That's something that everyone is going to have to contend with, because there is only one president. And if that's the basis of fascists can use to rise to power, it would behoove you to learn about the history of that particular group of people and that particular struggle.
No, agree 100%, Matt. That's beautifully said. So we have a great comment from Eric, who says, I asked a Trump supporter if she could denounce fascism yesterday. I didn't get angry at her or taunt her, etc. I just made a simple request that she denounce fascism. I said, fascism is wrong, right? Her response was just, nope, I love America. So I guess she realizes America is a fascist playground, and she's happy with it staying that way. Fuck, dude, that's crazy. The shit.
Yeah. But that's it. I really got to go. So, Jesus, I really appreciate it. Thank you, Lou. Thank you, Lou. Patrick.
I would love to do that show. Let's talk about Mexican history and the revolutionary spirit of it, too. Awesome. Thank you, Matt. Patrick, you got to check out, too, my friend. Are you still on for a bit?
Yep. Yeah, no, I can stick around.
Okay. No, that's a legitimate point. I was doing another show with Waistline a few days ago, and we were talking about the history of the soldier that come back to World War II and how they had uprisings and fought with guns, right? But Mexicans were also lynched, and these returning veterans were so critical to the formation of La Raza Party. They also took over counters. They were angry at the fact that they went to fight fascists in Europe and came back and couldn't be buried with white soldiers. So there's something to be said for this history and the racism that's happened, not just with African Americans, but Mexican Americans, any group, Filipinos, Asian Americans. I'm interested in doing a show that looks at the struggle and how these soldiers fought back, because we don't hear that in history books. We don't hear about Black soldiers that fought the police or fascists in this country, because they don't want us to know about that shit, But I find that that's a really interesting part of history that we should know about too. So Eric also says Antifa has already been declared a terrorist group by Trump. So I can totally see leftists continue to be attacked by politicians chanting centrism is a way. And a lot of people will probably buy into that lie. I think centrism is dangerous because it lets people starve, die, and it creates more Trumps. Well, let me leave that up there so you guys can see it, and I'll unmute you, Lou. Who wants to respond to that?
I do. So I think it's a mistake for us to even think about about Biden and what he has to offer as centrism. There is no centrism in America at this point. There is no such thing. And I mean by that, not that there's a left and a right, but there's only a right. That's really all there is in the government at this point. The only non-right that exists in the government right now are these working class people that have made their way into the government despite the Democratic Party. And I'm thinking of the Cori Bushes, I'm thinking of the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortezes, thinking of the Ayanna Presleys. I'm thinking of the Ilhan Omars. I'm thinking of the Rashida Tlaibs, and there are more now than there were. Jamal Bowman, I think now. I mean, there are others, but the reality of the situation is that when we talk about centrism or anybody talking about centrism now, they're really talking about a right-wing conspiracy. Conspiracy might be the wrong word.
No, the
I
reality.
think it's very interesting to look at how the parties are breaking up, both of them, the Republicans and the Democrats. And I don't think we should take lightly the breakup of the Republican Party. I think it's a serious one. I think that the possibility of a Trump party and another right-wing Republican Party that exists. So two such parties, or that some of these quote unquote centrist Republicans find their way into the Democratic Party and join with these quote unquote centrist Democrats. Well, they're right wing Democrats and right wing Republicans. So there'll be another kind of a party that forms. And I believe that what we're looking at, I think another history, and I think you may have had a program on this, but another history that's very important to look at is how the parties split in preparation for what wound up as the Civil War.
Yeah. No,
That'd
be a great show to have too, just to have more historical context. Because, yeah, that'd be brilliant. No, I agree.
That's what we're looking at now.
Yeah.
We're looking at not a replay of that, but there was an economic crisis in the 1830s, 40s, and 50s. An economic crisis that revolved around slavery and the development of industry. That economic crisis led to the fact that these parties broke up and a party formed, called itself the Republican Party, that fought slavery, that launched the Civil War. Well, it was really the South that launched the Civil War, but the election of Lincoln is what led to that. But the point is that we're in another economic crisis. That's what I was saying when I first started out. We're at a crisis in which housing, healthcare, everything is on the table, and it's no longer a question of simply of slave labor versus free labor. Now it's a question of corporate private property is being called into question, and that throws everything up in the air to think about. And that's why we have this right-wing thrust that gets masqueraded as centrism. If you went to Europe, you couldn't find a political party like our centrist parties that would be called centrist. They'd all be right-wing parties.
Interesting. Patrick?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting to pay attention to the bifurcations happening in both the Republican and the Democratic Party, how that's leading now to, like Lew was just saying, like 4, directions basically going into the future, with each of them, the contradictions in each of them, pulling them apart into 2 or more directions, and something very, very important to pay attention to, because I think that as far as the democratic socialist aspect of the Democratic Party, which I can speak to just as a member of DSA and someone who takes interest in it, is that they are serious people with regards to us, coming up with an alternative to the Democratic Party. They're not, I think, very, extremely interested at all in, or enthusiastic about the next 4 years of Joe Biden. Right. They're just having, these internal discussions about what it will take and what we need to effectively create a third party or to create an actual working class party. So that conversation is happening, and I think our job is, and Lew is someone who always brings this up, is a job similar to that of the abolitionists in the 1850s, you know, and that period, which is to escalate, to elevate this contradiction between private and public property, or in their case, between slavery and non-slavery and abolition. And so, you know, that I think that is our job to escalate that contradiction, right? Because even if there are 4 different contending political movements happening or whatever, you know, it really would, in a sense, it does come down to just 2, which is that for private property and for corporations, right? And that for the abolition of private property, you know, and it is our job to escalate that contradiction. And I don't think, personally, we need to resort to violent tactics to do that, or intimidation to do that. I mean, you know, that's a controversial opinion on the left. A lot of people actually are interested in arming themselves, and I don't have any qualm with that. I just think there's a way to elevate this contradiction before, you know, to the point where we get something out of it, not to the point where it becomes antagonism and civil war, you know, but to the point that we can, you know, perhaps rather than focusing on the threat of the far right fascist militias, but instead focusing extremely concretely and practically on the fight for basic needs, for housing and for healthcare and education and for food, you know.
100%. And I think you're actually hitting on what's the solution, that yes, we need to unite around the objective demands, because I said earlier, once Biden's in office, I'm still going to be arguing for my union members to have vaccines, for them to keep their jobs, for them to be able to have safe working conditions. It's not going to matter in the office. And Biden's not going to provide that shit for us. I don't think. Maybe. I don't know. You know? So I think that's beautifully said, because I'm awfully inspired by the mass numbers of people that are on the streets, but people who are getting woke and that hunger to be educated. And in that education, I say pick up the book before you pick up the gun, right? I think so. Lew, what do you think about that?
Well, I think this is a time for education. This is the period of time we're in. You know, I'm not going to say that there won't be another time, but this is the time where our forces are disorganized.
Yes.
There is, in a time of disorganization, you have to form your troops. If our troops were out in the streets in 26.5 million people this summer, but we couldn't really transform society, that tells you something about where we have to go. There is a period of intense activity of education, whether it's in the streets or whether it's in the schools, and I think that's the period we're in.
Yeah. And it's exciting. I get so when I have a group of students, because I teach for a living too, and hearing their ideas, and they're arguing for a cooperative society. They're saying people should have healthcare, jobs, enough to eat. They think it's bullshit to have to work 40 hours a week. They see this contradiction between the billionaires and they who are struggling day to day. They're fucking seeing it, you know? So I don't think it's going to be too much of a stretch to educate people that are ready. Okay.
Yeah.
That was mine, Eric. I said pick up the book before you pick up the gun.
I think you're right. I think that again, if we recognize that there already are on the ground in the South organizations that are fighting for basic democracy and basic needs. If we recognize that there are organizations around the country, like what Patrick is involved with the homeless union and the tenants unions, if we recognize that there are people around the country that are involved in a fight for health care for all, then we know that there is a movement for basic needs that is the movement that will be most effective in stopping fascism. That's it.
Yeah.
Now, I want to say one more thing about the breakup of the parties, because I think it's important. Historically, it's in the breakup of political parties that new parties are formed,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't come only from small groupings on the outside. They really come from the splintering of the bigger parties and amalgamating with some of the smaller ones. We have right now within the Democratic Party, you've got this caucus that I referred to as I mentioned some names,
Mm-hmm.
and people talk about them as the squad or whatever, but that's one section of the Democratic Party in the legislature itself.
Mm-hmm.
There's also, and I know I'm not going to name all of them, but I'm just going to name a few that I know of. There's the Working Families Party, or there's this United Working Families group in Chicago that's mostly within the Democratic Party. They have run people outside the Democratic Party, but they're mostly within the Democratic Party. There's this thing called the Justice Democrats that came out of, I can't remember, I think it was Nevada, in the 2016 election, pretty much. And they're another group of Democrats that are just dissatisfied with the way the Democratic Party has performed.
Mm-hmm.
There's a movement for a People's Party, which is an outgrowth of the excuse me, an outgrowth of the Bernie Sanders movement and people who are dissatisfied with the limitations of the Bernie Sanders movement. And there is, of course, Our Revolution, which is the Bernie Sanders movement itself.
Right.
So you can see that there are various formations that are developing here, and no matter and what's going to come out of that, including the squad. Eric just pointed out that there are now 8 members of the squad. Of the what's going to grow out of, they're the nucleus around which a section of the Democratic Party will break off. I think that's the nature of party formation. It's not, it's not my, it's just the way it is.
Right. No, that makes
Now,
sense.
it's not. I think we should be clear, though, that it's not likely to be a working class party. That isn't. And I'm not trying to diminish the importance of it. The importance of it is very important, extremely important. But hang on. Oops. Yeah, I had to dismiss that call. Okay, I don't want to dismiss the importance of this, because it what it does is it destroys, or is a motion toward a step toward destroying the connection between the Democratic Party and the working class. The Democratic Party has portrayed itself as a working class party ever since the days of Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't before that. Before that, it was the party of capital. But at that point, it was able to flip and became the so-called party of the working class.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that is no longer the case, if it ever was, and it is the thing that has really tied us to capital, is that they've been able to convince people that they are a working class party.
Right.
Well, now Now we have, and I think this is the tremendous opportunity that we have right now, is that with the Democrats in control of the House, the Democrats in control of the Senate, the Democrats as president, we now have an opportunity to recognize these guys for who they really are
That's right.
and move beyond that.
That's absolutely right. I think that is a fantastic way to end our show with hope and continue the conversation, because we're just in the beginning too. And I really appreciate all the wisdom and the history and the comments. Thank you, Eric and others. So he says, and here we go. One more parting shot. It says, and Biden wants to be FDR too. And he said Joe Manchin at least one block to progressive legislation.
Well, I think FDR number 2 is also a block to progressive legislation, because we can't live with an FDR 2.
No, we can't. We're not going to survive on that. So, where can people find you on your socials? I know you're both on Facebook, but
we're both on Facebook. Yes.
If you want to maybe promote your blog.
Child Labor Arts is my blog. I don't even remember for sure what the damn.
I'll look at that later. Child Labor Arts. And Patrick, what about you?
Don't have a blog yet, but yeah, follow League of Revolutionaries for a New America Chicago. Follow the People's Tribune, and follow the Chicago Union of the Homeless.
And definitely the Lerna Facebook page for Chicago is a good place to.
Absolutely, we're streaming. I forgot to mention that we are streaming on YouTube, the Lerna Chicago chapter page, and on Twitter. So thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope we can continue to have more of these and really bring more education and clarity to people, you know. So I appreciate that. One more comment, one more parting shot. He says, Manchin don't want us to have 2,000 checks even. Yeah, no shit. I'm sure I'm butchering that last name. But listen, Lew.
Thanks, Jesus. Thank you very much.
So much. This was amazing. We'll do this again.
Thank you, Lew, for having me.
It was a kick. Thanks.
See you soon. Take care. Keep on. Oh, I always close up. Put your love to the max. Keep fighting.
Definitely. All right. Take care.
You too. Thank you, Eric.